Hello, Jen Schwimmer here. Welcome to today's vlog. A couple of items today, one right here in the good old USA, one overseas. We'll start right here in the good old USA. This item doesn't really surprise me. It does a little bit because our friends, or most of them, or at least a lot of them on the left, they hate Trump so much that I was expecting all of them to be out in droves in November to vote for the Democratic nominee, regardless of who it turns out to be. But that may be incorrect. We all know about the Never Trump movement, the Never Trumpers, of which I was one, by the way. But after the election, I just admitted that the Never Trumpers lost. I watched Donald Trump, accepted him as the president. As time went on, I became more and more satisfied with his administration. I am no longer a Never Trumper. I'm going to vote for Trump in November. But it looks like there may be a similar movement on the Democratic side. Here's a headline: a quote, Never Biden, unquote, movement vows not to vote for Joe. On Tuesday night, meaning the primary that was just held, the Democratic primary in several states, but Michigan was the big state. On Tuesday night, Joe Biden's campaign was celebrating his latest primary night triumph. By Wednesday morning, Never Biden, Right in Bernie, and Dem Exit 2020 hashtags began trending on Twitter. The significance of the problem became apparent in the same string of primaries that put Biden on the cusp of the nomination. In Michigan, a state critical to Democrats' efforts to reclaim their general election footing in the Rust Belt, just 2 of 5 Sanders backers said they would vote Democratic in November, regardless of who became the nominee, according to exit polls. 4 in 5 said they'd be dissatisfied with Biden as the Democratic standard bearer. I have to say, part of that surprised me. I could see the dissatisfaction with Biden as the nominee, but only 2 of 5 Sanders backers saying that they'd vote for the Democrat in November. That is surprising, because if they're not going to vote Democratic, even if Sanders is the nominee and they're Sanders supporters, why the heck did they show up for the primary? There is certainly anecdotal evidence that for many progressives, Biden represents everything they dislike about mainstream Democratic politics. On, quote, the Young Turks, unquote, which draws millions of viewers. Crystal Ball, the former MSNBC host, said she couldn't vote for Trump. Quote, but you can leave it blank, unquote, she said, referring to the November ballot. Ball said she is an, quote, undecided voter, unquote, because, quote, if they always can say, quote, look, you've got to vote for us no matter what, you've got no other choice, unquote, then they're always going to treat us like this, unquote. She's absolutely right, and the obvious addition I would make to what Crystal Ball just said is it's the same thing with black voters. Why should Democrats do anything for black voters if they are going to vote for the Democrat no matter what? Now on to the second item. For this we go overseas to the Middle East, Israel and Judea and Samaria, the disputed territories. And actually there are 2 items here, 2 related items. It has to do with terminology in the conflict between the Palestinian Authority and Hamas on the one side and Israel on the other. I was talking a minute ago about my having been a never-Trumper and no longer being one because of my satisfaction with many, not all, but many of, well, I could say most, that's fair, most of Trump's policies. Some of the policies that have satisfied me the most are his policies on the Middle East. His peace plan, the deal of the century, whatever you want to call it, moving our embassy to Jerusalem. And now Trump abolishes controversial language on Jerusalem in new human rights report. The Trump administration will no longer refer to Arab residents of Jerusalem as Palestinians, Israel Hayom has learned. That's the publication where this is being reported. Israel Hayom, if you want to know what that means, that's Israel Today. In a new human rights report released on Wednesday, the U.S. for the first time calls the Arab residents of the capital, quote, non-Israeli residents who live in Jerusalem, unquote. The annual State Department report evaluates the state of human rights across the world. It has a chapter dealing with the situation in Judea and Samaria and Jerusalem. In recent years, its terminology has changed regarding those areas. 2 years ago, the report decided to omit the term, quote, occupied, unquote, in reference to Judea and Samaria. And last year, the report included strong rebukes of the Palestinian Authority and Hamas over their violation of human rights, rather than just over Israel's record. That's item one. Item two, and this is the item I really want to focus on, because what has disturbed me is not what the Palestinians have been doing that I'm going to report in a minute, because it doesn't surprise me. What really disturbs me is that the West is not taking notice of it, or at least we, President Trump, for all the good he is doing in the Middle East, there is one thing he is not doing that he needs to do, and that is to ignore whatever the Palestinians say to us and the West in English, and focus only on what the Palestinians say to their own people in Arabic. Trump should announce as U.S. foreign policy that when the Palestinians speak, we will only consider what they say in Arabic to their own people. When the Palestinians talk about desiring peace in English, we should say, okay, say that exact same thing to your own people in Arabic. Send us the tape, send us the newspaper clipping or the website link. Show us what you are saying to your own people in Arabic. We don't care what you say to us in English. This is why. PA, meaning Palestinian Authority, deceit, moderation in English, and extremism in Arabic. Bear with me, I'm going to read the entire article. It is important enough that I can't take little parts out of it. The PA's official news agency, Wafa, is a clear illustration of the PA's duplicity, which Palestinian Media Watch has exposed for over 2 decades. Palestinian Media Watch does exactly what its title implies. It monitors Palestinian media, television appearances, newspapers, websites, everything, Palestinian media, and simply translates the Arabic into English and posts the translations on their website. If it's a television appearance, they'll post the actual video and add subtitles so that we can see what these Arab speakers, these Palestinians, are saying to their own people. We can read it in English. In English, for foreign consumption, Wafa tries to present a moderate image and refers to Israel by name, simply, quote, Israel, unquote. But in Arabic, to its own people and the Arabic-speaking world, the official PA news agency refuses to recognize Israel, and instead of using the name, quote, Israel, unquote, calls it, quote, the 1948 territories, unquote. The expression, quote, the 1948 territories, unquote, is part of a longer PA expression, which is, quote, the territories occupied by Israel in 1948, unquote. According to PA ideology, all of Israel is said to be an illegitimate, quote, occupation, unquote, with no right to exist. Some areas occupied since 1948 and the rest since 1967. The following are 4 examples from recent WAFA reports that were nearly identical in Arabic and English except for the terminology used to name Israel. So you see the chart here. I'll read through the chart. On the left side, the left column, is what WAFA publishes in English. On the right side, the right column, is how they publish that same item in Arabic to its own people. Number 1, quote, Ibrahim Igbaria, 54, and his brother Muhammad, 51, are from the Arab village of Musharfa in Israel, unquote. And on the right side, quote, the brothers Ibrahim, 54, and Muhammad, 51, are from the village of Musharfa that is within the 1948 territories, unquote. Quote, the English version, the popular committees in Tamra and Kabul, 2 Arab towns in the lower Galilee in northern Israel, demonstrated against Netanyahu, unquote. The Arabic version to their own people, quote, the popular committee in Tamra and the popular committee in Kabul, which are within the 1948 territories, organized a demonstration today against Netanyahu, unquote. English, quote, the Palestinian Arab town of Al-Jish in the Galilee, northern Israel, according to local sources, unquote. The Arabic version to their own people, quote, the Palestinians and Arabs in the village of Al-Jish in the Galilee within the 1948 territories, unquote. And last example in English, to us, to the West, quote, the ID cards of worshipers coming from Arab towns in Israel and East Jerusalem. And the Arabic version to their own people, quote, the ID cards of the worshipers who came to the Al-Aqsa Mosque from the 1948 territories and Jerusalem, unquote. And note that also difference. For us, in English, they say East Jerusalem, but to their own people, they just say Jerusalem because they consider all of Jerusalem to be theirs. And they consider, as Palestinian Media Watch pointed out, all of the land between the Mediterranean and the Jordan, including Israel, to be all theirs, to be occupied territory, to belong to them. Now continuing, because there is more on this duplicity of the Palestinians in how they talk to us in the West and how they talk to their own people. Palestinian Media Watch has previously exposed that the PA is very conscious about the terminology it uses relating to the conflict with Israel. The PA's Ministry of Information has published a book instructing Palestinians which words to use. The introduction to the PA Ministry of Information's book stresses that correct Palestinian language must be chosen in order to avoid language that recognizes Israel's existence as, quote, natural, unquote. And quoting from the Ministry of Information's book, Quote, using the Israeli terminology turns the essence of the Zionist endeavor, i.e. Israel's statehood, from a racist, colonialist endeavor into an endeavor of self-definition and independence for the Jewish people, unquote, which of course is exactly what it is, but the Palestinians are instructed not to recognize what the reality is about Israel, that they are not colonialists, they are the indigenous population, and it's an endeavor of self-definition. So how are the Israelis supposed to make peace with them when they refuse even to recognize the historical fact and the historical legitimacy of Israel? Palestinians are encouraged to use terms that indicate that Israel is the result of, quote, a racist colonialist endeavor, unquote. And the book instructs Palestinians never to use the name, quote, Israel, unquote, alone, but instead to use the term, quote, Israeli colonialism, unquote. To use, quote, Israel, unquote, by itself is damaging, according to the PA, because to do so, quote, describes Israel as a natural state, unquote, which it is. The book includes charts with the, quote, poison terms, unquote, to be replaced by Palestinian terms. For example, all terms relating to terror and violence are whitewashed as, quote, legitimate resistance, unquote. And here's another chart. On the left, the Israeli term. On the right, the Palestinian Arab term. Israeli term, Palestinian terror. Palestinian Arab term, resistance. Israeli term, Palestinian terrorist. Palestinian Arab term, resistance member. Israeli term, suicide bombing operations. Palestinian Arab term, martyrdom seeking operations. Israeli term, Palestinian violence. Palestinian Arab term, legitimate resistance. Israeli term, person who was killed. Palestinian Arab term, martyr or shaheed. Shaheed is the Arabic word for martyr. And it's interesting to note the different way that the jihadists and the Palestinians, in this case, use the word martyr compared to the way we use it in the West. When you think of the word martyr in the West, you think of Christianity, you think obviously of Jesus Christ, who, if you're a Christian, was the ultimate martyr. The difference is that in the Western meaning, a martyr is an innocent person, an unarmed person who is killed. But in the jihadist lexicon, the Palestinians, a martyr is somebody who commits violence, who goes out and murders people. Civilians, murders civilians, that is a martyr to them. I just thought that I should note that very important difference. Israeli term, reciprocal violence. Palestinian Arab term, resistance response. The official PA school books are explicit about their non-recognition of Israel in any borders. See, for example, this map defined as the, quote, geographical area, unquote, of, quote, the state of Palestine, unquote. As you can see, it shows all of the area between the Mediterranean and the Jordan as Palestine, as their territory. Those multicolored bands that you see, those represent the Palestinian flag. The Palestinians are talking out of both sides of their mouths. They are talking to us in one way, saying that they want peace. To their own people, they are not saying that they want peace. Not only are they not saying that they want peace, they are refusing to recognize Israel's right to exist at all. And more than that, they are calling for, predicting the destruction of Israel. That's why I say, to repeat what I said earlier, that our policy going forward, our foreign policy, should be to pay attention only to what the Palestinians tell their own people in Arabic. If Mahmoud Abbas really wants peace, then he can go before his people, hold a rally, and say to them in Arabic, it's time to make peace with Israel. I'm not going to hold my breath. My suggestion is that none of you hold your breath either. And my final suggestion, well, actually I have several. Thumbs up if you like this video. Share it with anybody you think would also like the video. You can put any comments you might have in the comments section below the video, as well as any questions you might have, suggestions for future topics. I would love getting more subscribers, so subscribe, subscribe, subscribe. And finally, come back and see me again. I look forward to seeing all of you again. And until I do see all of you again, bye.